George Orwell's iconic novel 1984, published in 1949, raised the spectre of Big Brother. This nightmare has now been brought to reality by a conservative government, supposedly rolling back the state. The government has already undermined people's right to protest and withdraw labour. Now comes snooping and 24/7 surveillance of the bank, building society, and other accounts of the sick, disabled, poor, elderly, and the unfortunate, all without a court order. Over 22.4 million people would be targeted by this surveillance, but the account holders won't be told anything about the frequency and the depth of this organized snooping. In true Orwellian doublespeak, the government claims that the bill allows, and I quote, the country to realize new post-Brexit freedoms, unquote, and links surveillance by stirring up people's fears about benefit frauds, while there is absolutely no surveillance of those receiving public subsidies, mis-selling financial products, accused of PPE frauds, and even a former chancellor who abused the tax system. Numerous court judgments have condemned big accounting firms for selling illegal tax dodge schemes and robbing the public purse. But no accounting firm under this government has ever, no major accounting firm has ever, despite those judgments, been investigated, fined, or prosecuted. None of the accounts of those partners or those firms are under surveillance. This bill is part of a class war, and it only targets low and middle income people, while big beasts get government contracts. Currently, the Department of Work and Pensions can request details of bank accounts and transactions on a case-by-case basis on suspicion of fraudulent activity. But Clause 128 and Schedule 11 give the government unrestrained powers to snoop. The government says the bill, and I quote, would allow regular checks to be carried out on the bank accounts held by benefit claimants to spot increases in their savings, which push them over the benefit eligibility threshold, or when people spend more times overseas than the benefit rules allow for. This will help identify fraud and take action more quickly, unquote. So how prevalent is this benefit fraud which the government wishes to tackle? The government estimates that in 2023 it lost $8.3 billion to welfare fraud and errors. 80% of that is attributed to fraud. A government statement issued on 23rd November said that as a result of mass surveillance, benefit fraud would save the public purse, quote, £600 million over the next 5 years. On 29th November, in a debate in the other place, the minister mentioned a figure of 500 million, and despite a number of challenges, did not correct that estimate. So the government is hoping that mass snooping will generate savings of 100 to 120 million pound a year. We don't actually have a breakdown of this saving, and we don't even know how the government arrived at that number. Hopefully this number is more reliable than the government's estimates of the HS2 costs. And to put this in context, the government is spending nearly £1,200 billion this year, and it is introducing snooping to save about £100 million a year. The snooping of bank accounts suggests that the government is looking for unusual cash flow patterns. So what that means is that if anyone gives a lump sum to a loved one for Christmas, birthday, holiday, or home repairs, and it passes through their bank account, the government could seize upon that as evidence of excess resources and reduce or stop their benefits. Suppose a poor person pawns some household items for a few pounds and temporarily boosts his or her bank balance. Would that person be now labelled a fraudster and lose benefits? The government has not really looked at the details of what would actually happen. Many retirees have a joint bank account with another member of family or a friend. Under the government's crazy plans, now the third party would also be put under surveillance because they happen to have a joint account with somebody. So can the minister explain why people not receiving any social security benefits are to be snooped upon? Because they would be caught in this particular trap. Can the minister also explain how the snoopers will distinguish temporary and easily explainable boosts in bank balances from others? My lords, my background is I'm an accountant, and I have investigated things over the years, and I was also helping the Work and Pensions Committee investigate the BHS collapse and also the Carillion collapse as well. So I hope the minister can enlighten me on how this is all to be done. So I hope the minister can also clarify the scope of the bill as it applies to recipients of the state pension. The government has classified it as a benefit. So perhaps the minister can explain why is the state pension classified as a benefit? After all, the amount you get is determined by the number of years of national insurance contributions. So why is it actually a benefit? In the other place, the minister said, and I quote, "I agree to the extent that levels of fraud in state pensions being currently near zero, the power is not needed in that case. However, the government wished to retain an option should the position change in the future." Why does the government want to snoop on the bank accounts of the OAPs when there is hardly any fraud? Does the government actually have some sinister plan to treat the state pension as a means-tested benefit? Perhaps the minister could confirm or deny that. If the minister wishes to deny, can he explain why the government is then targeting retirees? What have they actually done? In this House, we have a more than fair share of senior citizens who receive a state pension, and their bank accounts would also be under surveillance. How long before a government abuses that information to blackmail members of this House and erode possibilities of scrutinising the government of the day? It is opening us all up to a blackmail by a government now or perhaps in the future. In the past, the government assured us that the health data would not be sold, but then actually sold it to corporations, as we heard earlier today. How can we trust that the government won't do the same with data collected via the snooping of bank accounts? What will they actually be selling? How can we trust the government? The mass surveillance is not subject to any court order. The concerned citizens won't be told, and their right to know is further eroded by Clause 9 of the bill. It is for the courts, not ministers, to decide whether requests for data are vexatious or excessive. Can the minister provide us some data telling us how many requests received for information by the government departments, how many requests are actually received by the government departments each year, and what proportion have been declared to be vexatious and excessive by the courts? You can't just say it is vexatious. I rather trust the courts. Clause 9 obstructs government accountability and further erodes Nolan principles. Just to give a personal example, I fought a 5.5-year battle against the Treasury to learn about the closure of the Bank of Credit and Commerce International in 1998 and 1991. It was the biggest banking fraud of 20th century, which is yet to be investigated. It has never been investigated. So I asked Treasury for some information. I was totally fobbed off. I went to the Information Commissioner, who sided with the Treasury. Therefore, I went to the courts to get some information, with the possibility that the judges might declare my attempt to learn the truth as vexatious and might even impose legal costs upon me. Fortunately, that did not happen, and I actually won the case, and the Treasury had to release some documents to me. That information showed that the Conservative government was covering up money laundering, frauds, secret funding of Al-Qaeda, Saudi intelligence, arms smugglers, murderers, and others. Information given to me has never been put on public record by this government. Now, can you imagine what would happen now if quest to learn something about the banking frauds is simply labelled as vexatious and excessive? How will we actually hold the government to account? This bill makes it harder to shine some light on the secret state, and I very much urge the government to rethink Clause 9. Finally, my Lords, I urge the Minister to answer the questions that I have raised so that we can have a better bill.